Before we start talking about hypotheticals on what constitutes the true character of a strong soul, we might want to descend within, into the depths of our inner self, into this dark and enigmatic realm of our inner room. Although it is not certain whether we can pull anything true from this psychological realm, we seem trapped in a situation where we have no other option. Because where else can we actually understand the term soul, assuming such a thing exists, if not through all the strange things in our own soul? What exactly is forgetfulness? First of all, it seems like a stupid problem. Anyone who has lost something important out of forgetfulness might have arrived at a typical piece of wisdom that there is nothing else to be said about it except that it is simply a flaw of memory and something bordering on stupidity. But what if forgetfulness is, in fact, such a special and unique and perhaps powerful psychological trait that everything related to consciousness would instantly collapse without it? There's a peculiar word that I'm using in the title. I said strong soul, which means that I'm also presuming some kind of relation to weakness, or at least the existence of a spectrum along which these weak and strong traits of the soul can vary. And talking about strength, who could be more appropriate as an anchor for this topic than the German sage himself, Friedrich Nietzsche, the famous warden of power? In fact, it is Nietzsche who explicitly describes forgetfulness as a profoundly underrated kind of feature, a very strange psychological phenomenon embedded within our biology, one that exists precisely so that our species can sustain itself. Forgetfulness is not just a fixed inertia or a force of inactivity or resistance, said Nietzsche in Genealogy of Morals, but is rather an active ability to suppress, positive in the strongest sense of the word, to which we owe the fact that what we simply live through, experience, take in, no more enters our consciousness during digestion than does the thousand-fold process which takes place with our physical consumption. We have to admire the comparison he's making here, that he would actually place the way our digestive systems work alongside the psychological nature of forgetfulness. We all know that when we eat, the food will be processed in our bodies without having to burden our souls. We don't even have to think about the process. Now, the same kind of forgetfulness, of carelessness for Nietzsche, is also incredibly important to how we live our existential lives. This capacity to ignore a vast amount of information and to just forget all kinds of details is in itself a feature that must exist within a person in order for them to get through life. In other words, for Nietzsche, if we want to keep our sanity, we have to forget certain things. We can even do it without trying. Forgetfulness is such a natural trait within us, as if our bodies have successfully developed precisely this feature for our own good. To shut the doors and windows of consciousness for a while, not to be bothered by the noise and battle with which our underworld of serviceable organs work with and against each other. A little peace, a little tabula rasa of consciousness to make room for something new. That, for Nietzsche, is what a strong soul would allow itself to be. And through precisely this strength, we can immediately extend toward what could constitute the definition of a weak soul. That is, those who are so obsessively paralyzed by every moment that it encounters. A soul that is unable to allow itself their own capacity to forget. A weak soul is one that is so extremely receptive to everything in life that it becomes impossible even to imagine taking a step that doesn't tremble beneath the weight of its own desire to understand everything. This type of passion to grasp every bit of information for Nietzsche is antithetical to courage, not only because it is virtually impossible to understand everything, every cause and effect, but it is also the case that the momentum of life is primarily enabled only by courage, the willingness to step forward into the future without even having the truth at hand. This doesn't mean, however, that Nietzsche wanted us to be barbaric against reason or to dispense with rationality, but that in the end, there will never be enough information to justify any decision. Lack in every decision in life is simply inevitable. Therefore, for Nietzsche, forgetfulness is one of the powerful capacities of our psychology, a capacity that allows us at times to forget even death and move forward.